What I've learned about Bitcoin. Wait, what I've learned about myself because of Bitcoin. It's something that I could talk about for many videos, I think, and I've thought about doing this video for a long time. Thought about making it a series or maybe part of a bigger series, so maybe that's what it is. But right now, this is just an idea, and this is just a rambling of different things that I've learned basically about myself and about the world because of studying and getting interested in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has taught me many things, a lot of them about the monetary system and a few of them about myself. And I find that that is something that people don't get into too much. But when you learn something new, it changes you. And I think learning that the monetary system that we participate in and that we believe in is flawed in some deep, deep ways. And that knowledge will change who you are, just as any knowledge changes who you are. But this one, quite significant because that is a significant new belief. When people get into religion, it changes the way they are because they create or get introduced to new belief systems. So this is just a belief system. That's why, it changes, it explains so much and about the world. Uh, it answers questions that are deep questions, but why the world is the way it is and the problems with it. And these are things that we feel. And when something addresses the way you feel, it's going to have a fairly big impact. Now, that impact is going to be different for every single person based on how much you feel something. I have felt my entire life, and I've been told basically my whole life, that there's something wrong with the way the world is. And that is part of why I have an inquisitive mind and I want to investigate things. And when a new idea is presented to me, I try to learn about it. And that is what has driven me to adopt Bitcoin, to accept Bitcoin, to think, talk, share. Next week, I'm hosting my first meetup about Bitcoin. And now I'm making videos about it. So obviously it has impacted me in some deep ways. Now these ways are kind of hard to explain, but it can be boiled down to simple things, which is what I'm going to try to do. So for instance, the idea that decentralization is a form of security, just as diversification, it basically, if you only have one holding of an asset, you have all your eggs in one basket. And that puts you in a very fragile position where you either benefit from that asset or you are negatively impacted by that asset. And the weighting is very strong of that impact because you have all your eggs in one basket. So when you diversify, you spread that risk out, and that actually makes you more balanced. And I've learned that the basis of, I've learned basically that money is a technology and it's an extremely important technology. And some people think that money is not important. I've even had people talk about how we need to get back to bartering. And I just think, why are the largest companies in Canada banks? The Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, TD, Toronto Dominion. These are two of the largest companies in Canada. And their entire dealings, everything they do, is about dealing with the technology of money. It's incredibly important. It's an incredibly important tool. It's an incredibly important technology. And another thing, well, basically, this isn't about myself, but I've learned that we need fair tools. We need level technology. We need equalization. And the financial tools that banks have, and that is corrupted and manipulated by different interests, that creates an unfair playing ground. So I touched on a couple different things there that are slightly impactful for who I've become based on what I've learned, but they're not exactly what I'm trying to get to, and that's why this is a complicated subject for me to explore, especially within one video. So I think this may be a series. But let's see. I have some things written down here that I want to get to. So one thing that I've learned from Bitcoin, and this is a very tangible one. So I'm glad I'm going to be talking about this, but is that it's taught me to have a long-term horizon outlook of life. You benefit from Bitcoin financially in the long term. In the short term, it trades sideways and down, and you have to be holding it for the unexpected times where it goes up, 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 and gets range bound again. So financially, that makes sense. But there are other things in your life and other ideas out there, religious ideas. So if we go to Christianity and the idea of an afterlife, of heaven, and that's and Abrahamic religions in general. If you go to Hinduism, there's the idea of reincarnation, which is another life. So what you do here has consequences further down than we basically than what we're doing now. So it makes you think about the future in a different way if you believe that the future's longer. If you think that you're going to die tomorrow and that's it, like you don't believe in an afterlife, how are you going to behave today? If you think that you are going to die in 20 years, how does that make you think about today? You're going to behave, you're going to feel, you're going to act in a much different way based on those two scenarios because you have a longer term view of life and of consequences and actions and a shorter time view. So we benefit as individuals by adopting an outlook that goes further out. Many different religions and different beliefs tell you that, invest for the long term. It's better to, even in the financial markets, it's better to have time in the market than try to time the market. You have to think about your future. You go to school not because school is productive in a meaningful exterior way, but you go to school so that in the future you can be more productive in different ways than you would have been if you hadn't gone to school. So everything, there are lots of things that are traditionally valued or traditionally good, whether religious or societal ideas, that embrace at their core, encourage you to have a longer look on the actions you take. And this is a positive thing. Working out one day is not going to change your life, but working out for the rest of your life or, for years is going to impact your life in meaningful ways. So it's good to adopt that idea. It pushes you away from hedonism of destruction for personal gain, and it pushes you towards being more cooperative. When you are long-term thinking, you have to. When you're long-term thinking, it's as if you're in a city and you're passing strangers. That is short-term thinking, and long-term thinking is thinking, I'm going to the grocery store and I'm going to see the same people over and over. So there's these traditional values that are, that society is basically making you lose different ways of how you could realize that there's long-term effects from your short-term behavior. There's more forgiveness for short-term behavior. Even just, the phones, the instant dopamine, the instant reward. These are all things that push us away from the behavior of long-term actions. So Bitcoin is just a reminder of that. Just as, I'm sure reading that information in some religious text is a reminder of that, of practicing that in whatever form that takes. Thinking about Bitcoin, thinking about having this for the long term, and that the value proposition of it and the actual value of it only happens over the long term is powerful. And even within the cryptocurrency world, there is kind of that too thinking. There's the hodl, the hold on for dear life, hold for the long term, never sell your Bitcoin crowd. And then there are the degenerate gamblers that don't even know what Bitcoin really is. It doesn't just take knowing the word Bitcoin to know what Bitcoin is, or to understand that it's a digital currency. None of those things adequately describe what Bitcoin is. It takes a long time. I heard about Bitcoin 2011. I went to a falafel restaurant, a Middle Eastern restaurant. Well, I got falafel, so I called it a falafel restaurant. And they had a Bitcoin ATM. And I was pressing buttons on it. My curiosity. I didn't buy Bitcoin again until 2017. And then I never got serious about it. And then I got serious about it in 2020. And the reason is because I knew what Bitcoin was. I even told people, this is like a digital equivalent to gold. I knew what that was, but I didn't, even saying that isn't what Bitcoin is either. It's so much more than that. And it took until 2020 when I started researching, started learning. And it took years, that's 4 years ago. I feel like I finally, just the other week, I was driving and I was thinking about Bitcoin in this unique way. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like that sort of realization feeling of like, whoa, my mind is blown because I've never thought about it in that way. I am still learning things. And that's because of how complex and what it is. And it's actually developing in real time. We actually see what it's doing. We see the actions of game theory in a political sense. Right now, we're seeing that. It's amazing. And it's taken me years to understand that to any degree that I am now. And even longer than that, it took me years of knowing what it was before I had any disposable income that I could put into it. I mean, I didn't know that it was a savings account. Otherwise, I would have saved in it back then. Now I know that it's a savings account. And it can be as simple as that. It can be as simple as a savings account if that's all it is to you. But at least that gets you owning it. And when you own something, you're more likely to care about it. When you own something, you're more likely to care about it. And that is another thing that I've learned about from Bitcoin. And that goes to housing. You're more likely to care about your dwelling, the actual physical house, if you own it rather than if you rent it. When you rent something, it is close to disposable. It is much closer to disposable. And therefore, it's shorter time frame. When you own something, you're thinking longer time frame. So that is a very powerful thing to have learned from Bitcoin. And, it's like, I know these things, I've thought about them before, but just as you can know what Bitcoin is and you can think about it before, you can always learn more. And I have learned more about long-term thinking because of Bitcoin.